welcome to this very special edition of the KJ Masterclass Live, the show which ensures that you profit from your time spent here with experts either through their industry insights, information, or simply learning from them. And today we have John Graham, three-time USA Memory Champion, Grandmaster of Memory, entrepreneur and mentors high performers, including a world record holder and national memory champion. Welcome to the show, John.
Thank you, Ajay. I'm happy to be here.
You are welcome to the show, John. You are welcome to India in this online form. And I'm sure not just in India, but a lot of people across the globe will benefit from what we are going to talk right now. We'll be talking about how one can master memory and overcome anxiety. But before that, John, I want to understand about you itself for the audience. Who is John Graham? What is he? Is it about only memory or is it much more beyond that? Help us about your story before we come to the memory story.
Yeah, I was not born with a naturally good memory or photographic memory or anything like that. I'm not gifted in any way. And so when I was 27 years old, this was 10 years ago, I learned how memory athletes remember information. These are ordinary people that use techniques like visualization, imagination, story, connection, and to enhance your memory so that you can store it in your mind and you know where the information is. So I just started practicing these techniques. I got really good at them, and of course I won some national memory championships. But underneath the surface of all of that, right, on my way to the top, I was struggling internally with anxiety, with panic, with freezing up mentally, and I didn't know what was happening, right? So that's my journey, is like finding a way through that. That was the more impressive feat in my mind, overcoming anxiety and panic attacks, because I think so many people struggle with those, and I didn't know the answer, didn't know the solution.
Right, right, John. So I want to understand, means you started at the age of 27 about this whole memory championship and all. But before that, did you have this anxiety thing or not at all? And it only came only when you started achieving something.
I think my anxiety started when I was 13 years old. I changed schools. I had a major surgery on my chest, and I had a lot of fear that something was very wrong, like with my family. I was all worried about like my mom was going to die on the way to work, and I was constantly worried, constantly thinking ahead, trying to survive that uncomfortable feeling. So I think it started at a young age, and it just built and built and built. And the way I coped with it was I just tried to figure everything out in my head. I tried to plan ahead and make sure I had everything figured out so that I was safe. But it started, and I didn't realize until I was in my 20s that it was anxiety, because I started to feel it in my body, the heaviness, the dread, the heart palpitations. My heart would always skip a beat, and the doctor would say, "Oh, nothing wrong, it's normal." But I said, "No, something's going on inside of me." And I always knew something internally was happening, but I didn't know what.
Right, right, John. So, how did you then, tackle this particular thing while you were achieving all those USA Memory Championship, Grandmaster of Memory? How did you tackle it? What was the turning point? As you said, it's you were suffering from it at an early age, 12, 13 years of age, and then you started dealing with. What was the turning point which told you you have to overcome this particular thing, and which you did not do for several years or for whatever reason of yours?
Yeah. At the 2019 World Memory Championship, I had a panic attack in the very first event, the very first day. This is a 3-day event, 10 events. Had a panic attack, right? And that was the worst moment. I realized something was really wrong. I didn't know, like, what's wrong with me was a question that kept swirling, right? Because internally, I'm like a deer in the headlights. I would memorize and I would just go, and like freeze in fear, just spiral with all these thoughts. So that was the point where I said, okay, something's going on internally. I have to figure this out, right? And all the doctors, they want to give you Xanax, a medication. They want to have you talk to a therapist, and that's okay. Like, but I didn't want to manage it. I didn't want to cope with this feeling. I wanted it gone forever. And so since those methods, the supplement route, the meditation route, that just kind of maintains it, just kind of gently calms it. I wanted it gone. So since I wanted it gone forever, I went a different route and I had to seek what is the actual root of this problem, the real root. And that's when I discovered that anxiety is not a mental problem like everyone says it's mental health. It's emotional. It is an emotional issue. And when I learned that, I could deal with it and release it.
Right. That's a good understanding of yours. Some people may agree. Some people may look at it in their own understanding. But what do you mean by it's an emotional issue and not something else? And how did you then actually get down to dealing just by discovering that it's an emotional thing? Then what did you do about it? How did you tackle it? If you say you wanted to get rid of it forever, I assume that it's gone now. So it's a
Yeah.
great thing if it has happened. How did you do it? People who are going through this will find it very informative for them, very inspirational if they can learn something from you.
Yeah. The root of it is suppressed emotion. We all have suppressed emotions. So literally everything in your life, in your past that was uncomfortable, heartbreaks, breakups, people, resentments, angers, everything in your life that you pushed away that you couldn't handle is still trapped inside of you. So we have unresolved emotions that need to be felt because they're suppressed. They're blocking our nervous system, our organs, they're affecting us internally. And the reason people think it's a mental issue is because we pop up into our head to survive this uncomfortable feeling. This uncomfortable feelings in our body, but we pop up into our head to try to survive, try to figure out the best way to deal with our life to make sure we don't feel uncomfortable emotionally. So when I learned that this is trapped emotions, these are unresolved emotions in our bodies, what I did was I decided I learned that the only way to resolve this is to feel and experience all those things that are inside of me. Because the only way this will release is if we feel it and process it out. That's all it needs. That's all it wants. So I literally made a list of every single thing that bothered me. I started to notice everything that bothered me. If someone cut me off in traffic, a relative who I was annoyed with, someone on Facebook, a politician, whatever, because those were indications, those moments that bothered me were suppressed emotions that were trying to come up. But most people, what they do is they suppress it. They scroll on their phone because they're feeling uncomfortable, or they go for a walk to feel better, or they, go to the bar to have a drink to blow off steam, right? But if you don't resolve that and you push it back down, it's going to just keep festering inside. So I was like, I want to deal with this. I want to face it and feel that uncomfortable feeling so that it can release and process out. And I did that over days and weeks and started noticing that there was incredible relief in my body and in my mind. It was healing itself.
Right, right, John. So I want to understand, is having a good memory, if I understand it, or being a memory champion, was it a negative thing for you because it was difficult for you to forget about things that made you anxious? How does that work? How did that work for you?
That's an interesting question. With memory techniques, I don't remember every single thing. I choose what I want to remember. So I guess I'm human in that way. I don't memorize every single thing of the day. So I get to, but it's important. Memory is very important because our past, haunts us sometimes, like you're alluding to, right? Those moments that are uncomfortable. And a lot of people want to forget them, but I challenge you, like, if they keep coming up, don't forget them, like, feel them. Don't think about what to do about these memories. Don't push them away. That's the reason they're in. And so now, if as a memory champion, if a memory comes up from my past that's uncomfortable, I'll let it do what it wants to do. Because in that experience, it can process. You're ready for that to process out, to leave your being, to learn and integrate that lesson. So to that point, I think all of us should face those things. They're very, very uncomfortable, right? Those moments that wake us up in the middle of the night and we push them away, but they're going to stay inside of us if we don't process them.
Right. So if we feel them, it can hurt us. And will it be over after that, or it will be not? It will keep on coming again and again. And if we tend to face them, then the pain will be gone bit by bit. Or is it that it comes once and it's over? How does that work?
It's a good question. if you choose to ignore it and keep it down, you'll keep getting louder and louder in your life until where it came to me, I had panic attacks because I wasn't listening to it. I was pushing it, right? So either way, it will be painful. If you choose to push it away, it'll keep coming up in your life. If you choose to face it, yes, it will release as emotional pain. You will feel it. You have to. It's the only way it will release. That's what it needs, is to be felt. So it will be released as pain. But when it releases, when moments of this release, it's gone forever. Okay, so you bit by bit, chunk by chunk, boulder by boulder, you feel through this and release it for good.
When did you get rid of this whole thing? Does it now it is? Does it come to you again? Anxiousness, and is it as severe or it doesn't come at all?
Yeah, so when people talk about anxiety, what I'm talking about is the chronic anxiety, the heaviness in your body, the heart palpitations, the brain fog, right? The visceral. It's very heavy. I don't have that anymore, right? Some people say, like if you have a test coming up and you feel nervous, that's a little bit of anxiety. That's normal. That's a normal human experience that every single person on this planet will always feel, right? So yes, moments like that, I'm human, still happen, but I'm allowing them to happen so they release much quicker and they don't affect me. But the heaviness, the panic, all of those physical nasty things are gone because I dealt with all the things that were inside of me.
Right, right, John. What is it? The relationship between champions and people, high performance and anxiety. Is anxiety, if it is related to past, then why do they feel so much in their performances or just before their performance? Help us understand this. And how is it? Is it different than other people, general people having anxiety, or is it more or less with high performers?
I mean, high performers have a lot of anxiety if they're honest with themselves. The reason is our conditioning, right? So for me, I can speak for me. I was conditioned to fight reality. So if there's what we do typically as people is we want life to be the way we want it to be. We want to win the award, we want to make the money, we want to get the client, we want it to be sunny outside, we want to be fit. But if life doesn't happen the way we want it to, right, we try to push those uncomfortable moments away. And I was conditioned that way unconsciously. So as a high performer, as a memory champion, if I didn't win, or if someone disrupted the event or something happened, it bothered me. It really affected all of that stuff that was inside of me, right? So that was the conditioning. I had been conditioned to seek life the way I wanted it to be. And I think a lot of people are that way too. They want it to be this way and they push away, avoid the things they don't want. But I'm saying the way to peace and harmony as a high performer, as anyone, is to allow all of it to happen. You have no preferences. If you have no preferences for how you want life to be, then you're not going to suffer internally. You make peace with those. And there's a divine flow to life, right? You get in alignment with that divine flow. Instead of fighting it, you're going to be more internally in peace, which makes you perform better, right? You perform much better when you're calm and at peace and grounded than when you're fighting reality or fighting yourself internally and having all this resistance.
Right, right, John. So let's talk about, mental peace. Even as an individual, forget about millions of people. Even if I am within myself and there is some important thinking to be done, especially if a camera is on, I may just be, nervous or anxious about it. I may forget about everything. Especially I have got pent up feelings, pent up emotions, trauma, whatever it is, or I have, chronic anxiety. How did you then deal with it when you were performing this mental feats on TV shows all around the world? 400 in front of 400 million people, if I understand it.
Mm-hmm.
Now, that's a huge amount of people just by the thought of it. How did you work that out? How did you put that anxiousness, even in a normal level, to your background? And what is the mental feat, if you can help us understand?
Yeah. So in China, just to talk about what I did, 400 million people watched the show called Super Brain. It aired last month. I was asked to go head to head with someone in China, the best in China, we had to memorize 100 random objects, like this mug and this pen. Each item was placed in a different locker number. So 1 through 100. I had to memorize what locker number each item went in. And then each locker number had a 4-digit code that locked. So I had to memorize all the 4-digit codes for all 100 lockers too. Right? Live on stage, And so you have to know how to handle your emotions and the pressure, right? And so to your point, you can't do this from day one. You have to practice this. You have to practice allowing this stuff to come up. So if I'm feeling nervous, like right now, I wouldn't battle it. I would allow it to happen. Same thing on stage. If I'm feeling nervous, I'm feeling anything, I let it happen and I'm aware of it. I'm in my body with it instead of because when we jump to our head to survive, to figure it out and push it away, that's when issues happen. That's when we forget. That's when stress, right? We tense up, tension, right? So I've conditioned myself to relax my body, to regulate my nervous system so that I'm not tense, because when you're tense is when you forget stuff. When you tense is when your head, you live in your head in panic and anxiety, right? If you relax your nervous system over time, which I teach people, if you stay relaxed, you can stay in the flow. You can remember your conversation. You can have a conversation like this. Like I have no notes, right? I'm just having a conversation with you because I'm in that moment. And you perform much better when you're in that moment, dealing with everything that's going on than trying to think ahead and trying to worry about things that can throw you off.
Right, John. So do you keep a diary or notebook to remember things, or you just keep everything in memory?
Of course I have notes of I use a technique called Memory Palace. So I use places that I know, like my home, my friends' homes, my relatives' homes, to store information. Like I turn the information into an image in my mind and put it in their furniture, like their couch, their sofa, so I can visually go back and see what I want to remember. But of course I'm human too. And if I read a book I like, I'll take notes and I'll review the notes. If you want to remember notes, you're going to have to write in bullet points, and you're going to have to review them with spaced repetition, right? It doesn't lock into my memory forever. I still have to review it, but I review it in a strategic way, so I'm not cramming and just like looking at it over and over and over, right? I have much more efficient ways to remember that.
Right, John. So you talked about the China event, the mental feat in front of so many people. Now, if I have to remember, say, three things, I will still try as a normal human being, try to put some sort of, context to it so that I can remember. But still, I would be wanting to be safe and keep something, notes or something.
Sure.
But how did you do it for hundreds of items? Means, how do you even create those contexts? I'm asking this question so that people who want to have, say, several things to remember, what is the best way to create that context in the mind, especially students or other people, speakers who may not be, as time goes by, you tend to become a bit forgetful in life. So even while talking, I may have 2-3 questions in my mind, and by the next question, I may forget it. So I tend to write it, but not every time it is possible. So how does a simple person create context, which are, say, more than 2-3 numbers?
Yeah. Well, on the show, what happened was, an item comes up. So I see the mug, and now I have to memorize a 2-digit number, the locker number, and a 4-digit code, right? So what I use to memorize numbers, and how do I attach the numbers to this mug, is I use the major system. The major system is basically, and anyone could look this up, every number from 0 to 9 has a different sound, a consonant sound. So like 0 is S, and 1 is T. So you learn these sounds, and you combine numbers and make words with those sounds. You sound out the numbers and come up with a word. So that gives you an image, right? Like an image of a melon or a fox or whatever it is. And you take that image from the number and you attach it to the mug. You make a story. You link them, right? And that's how I memorize the items, is one by one. I would attach, the story to the item, so that when I saw the item again on the screen, they said, okay, what locker number is the mug in? I would look at the mug and I would instantly see the melon and the fox, like the story. Because I made it visual and fun. And so the same thing happens if you're memorizing vocab words or languages or anything. you take a keyword or keywords from your definition, right? The word and the definition, and whatever comes to your mind first, don't judge it. Make an image and a story and link it together. Make it goofy, make it funny, so that it's memorable, it's sticky, right? So the next time you see it, it's like, oh, I remember that, instead of just reading it over and over.
Right, right, John. One question I wanted to ask was about authenticity and vulnerability. In today's time, there is so much of talk about all these things, authenticity and being vulnerable. For a performer, for someone like you, how easy or difficult it is to be yourself? Because especially high performers, people look at them as something extra, something different, something special, and they always want that thing to happen whenever they are performing. If they become their authentic self or try to be vulnerable, they may tend to lose that charisma or people's attention towards being special, which what makes them. How does then a high performer or someone who people look up to be authentic and vulnerable at the same time while they are being a high performer for the people, which makes them so special?
Yeah. Well, that's a great question. Before, when I had anxiety, I didn't want to share with the world that I was struggling with anxiety and panic. I wanted to push that away. I was not being vulnerable. I was like trying to pretend I'm like this macho, supreme, superhuman person, right? So I have this ability, but I'm also a human being. If I share that, yeah, I had anxiety. Yeah, I got paralyzed. Yeah, I had a panic attack at a world championship. Then people like listen and go, oh my gosh, he's just like me. He's a human who struggles. And they will listen. That will magnetically grab people because they don't see you on a pedestal. They see you, that's me. They see themselves in you, right? Living a human experience. So what I've learned is authenticity is sharing truth. The truth of what happened with me, the truth what I believe, instead of like trying to be someone I'm not. And I think there's a lot of people like, who are pretending to be better than they are and to hide. And people can sniff that out. They know that. So I just know personally that if I'm vulnerable and share the reality of my life, that I will attract the people in my life that, clients, people that I can work with, people I can help much better, much easier. And people resonate. People want to hear that these days. They don't want to hear the BS anymore.
Absolutely, well answered, and that's something very very good to understand, that people are becoming, in this age of so much artificialness, so much of AI, and so many things which is so artificial. People are wanting more of authenticity, more of people like them, but who are performing special things in their life.
Yeah.
Wonderful to know this. So there is much to learn from you about all those things, all these things about John, and I'm sure a lot of people would want to know more about you, from you, engage with you professionally. What is the best way for them to do so?
Yeah, two ways. I have a free training for everyone on how to release your anxiety for good forever. Chronic anxiety panic. And you can go to releasepanic.com/free to download that. But you can also follow me on Instagram at memoryjohng. Ask me questions, interact, and I give more tips and tricks there too. So I appreciate it. If anyone has a question, find my email or message me on Instagram. I'd be happy to help.
Wonderful. With this, it's a wrap on this very special edition of the KJ Masterclass Live. Thank you so much indeed for joining us.
Yeah, thank you guys.